met Professor Dan down at the county store. He said, I've got a brain map and a whole lot more. He had a 5-eye word and a shining new grin. Straight from the online thesaurus, he was cashing them in. He said, vivid means cheap and opaque means clear. I said, damn, that ain't right. He said, I learned it this year. He talked so slick, you'd swear he knew the town, till you listen real close and the meaning fell down. He could tell you all about a polygraph test, every wire, every needle, every puff in the chest, what the sweat on your palm means, what the blink of your eye, how the little machine knows if you're telling a lie. He described it in detail, every minuscule part, but the facts went missing like a hole in his heart. He was accurate sounding, but that's where it ends. A mile of good spelling in a yard of no sense. And he leaned right in like he had the cure for every old problem a person endures. Psychobabble, he'd murmur, I know how it goes. Then he'd trip on the jargon from his head to his toes. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, he reads one page and he thinks he can. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, all that noise no understand. Oh, Professor Dan. Professor Dan. He's an expert on hounds and the scent in the air, on police line chalk and a flashlight glare, on search and rescue where the mud runs deep, on the way a lost soul breaks and the secret won't keep. He'll talk addiction, trauma, ADHD, like every psychiatrist calls him up for free. Doc, what's your advice? He'll say with a grin, then he'll answer himself before the truth gets in. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, he reads one page and he thinks he can. Professor Dan, oh, Professor Dan, all that noise no understand. Oh, Professor Dan. Oh, Professor Dan. Well, he's got every answer in a digital pile, but the more he explains it, the less it feels like he's got confidence, sure, and a dazzling pose, but he's mixing up wisdom with the words he chose. Now he's 10 feet taller in the key of G, still wrong as a fence post, plain as can be. He's a master of nothing, but he sure loves the sound of his own big opinions circling around. So if you need a lesson in what not to do, call Professor Dan and he'll prove it to you. He's full of big talk and a borrowed brain. Every word sounds smart, but it lands in the drain.
Welcome in, everyone. I like that, Fred. Teflon Dan, nothing sticks to him. I think you're right about that. Sorry, I was late yet again. Just going to put this picture up. I added Maddie in with this because I was looking for a picture to put up, and this is my favourite picture of Maddie, so I thought, why not? I'm sure Lily and Jack won't mind having Maddie there at the same time. So let me see who's in here. Welcome, Mike, Ariel, Camilla, if you're in here. Well, I'll just welcome Camilla anyway. Women's Warrior, Bronzer. Who else have I got in here? Grover, Anki, Artemisa, Seashell. I know I'm missing people. Fred, Deborah, Dodie. Good to see people coming in. That seems to be, well, that's the one that I'm going with, I think, by the looks of it. That obviously is not the final version. I will put it into a proper, music video kind of thing like I do with the others. So I've just, after cancelling my subscription about a month ago, I've just re-upped my subscription so I can do the videos and the clips and stuff. I'm going to address the elephant in the room first, and that is that Shenanigans has basically quit YouTube again. She's removed all her live streams. She's got one video left and she's got a post left where she's just basically saying she's fed up with the toxicity, she's fed up with the bullying, she's fed up with people trying to report her to CPS just because they can out of spite. I think people know that I don't agree with content creators getting close to people in a case if those people are potentially suspects. But at the same time, I don't believe that anyone should be bullied to the point where they have to get off YouTube, to be bullied off YouTube. So I was just going to briefly address that and say that I wish all the best to Shannon. I hope that maybe down the track she might consider putting her channel back and looking at other cases. True, she has. I have not watched her channel for a while because I found it a little bit confronting. But her level of bullying and the bullying that was put on her was, I think that was crossing a line. I think there's a lesson in there in terms of how people need to conduct themselves on here on YouTube. Because if you are going to come at people, then yes, people are going to come at you. But there needs to be, some people overstep the line. I think, she made mistakes. She got herself far too close to this case. She probably needed to have a look at the way that she spoke to other people in terms of respect-wise. But she also didn't deserve to be bullied as much as she did. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it at that. That's just me addressing, like I said, the elephant in the room. She's not guilt-free. I'm not saying that she is, but I'm saying that the level of bullying that was directed at her was too much. That's my number one advice to any content creators out there who are bullied. Just don't buy into it. Let people come up with whatever stories they want. Let them do whatever they want. The moment you respond, you're basically feeding the beast. And I think there's a big lesson in that. And I think that's where she got a lot of people offside with the I know all this stuff, but I'm not going to tell you. I know better than you. I'm not going to tell you. I know that this thing is correct, but I'm not going to tell you why. She certainly didn't help herself. But the base of the matter here to me is that people did go too far. And no, I'm not going to I'm not going to give them the recognition that they would like by naming them. But, when it's okay to turn around and say you disagree with content creators. But if you actually turn it into an attack, it's not the way to go. I mean, I've said here with Charmaine and Sunny when I've been talking about their content, there's been a few times where I've just said, I disagree with this. And even then I felt like maybe that was a bit unfair. Anyway, I'm going to move on from that. Now, I want to talk about something else to do with Jack and Lilly that's been baffling me for a bit. Because, okay, just pause that. There's been people in my live stream commenting about this slide and saying that it's unsafe. And it's got me baffled. I don't know if maybe we're just a tougher bunch here in Australia, but that doesn't look any steeper than any slide that I played on as a kid. At least it's not that solid metal that your skin melts onto on a hot day. And just to, and because I was, questioning, like, is that overly steep? I mean, it's got the handles at the top to hold onto before you're ready to launch. It's got the little bits on the side to hold onto with your hands to control speed. So I was questioning, looks like it was made for a small structure. The top part is normally level, but this is at an angle. Yeah. The top part usually is fairly level, and it does look like it's slightly higher up. It looks like it should be level with the base of that upstairs bit. But in terms of angle, I went through and I just had a look at some other ones online. In terms of, like, that one, you can see that it is level at the top and then it does go down, but it's still quite steep. And going on to this is what we grew up on. There was no platform at the top. You basically just balanced yourself at the top with those bars. And then usually there was a puddle in the bottom that you would land in, a filthy, muddy puddle that you'd put the fire out in your bum when you got to the bottom, basically. But, this is what we grew up with. These bloody slides that you climb on, and you go down. By the time you get to the bottom, you got third-degree burns, and then you drown in the bottom. So I'm not overly concerned. Those spinning things, the wheels that had the handles on them, and someone would run around on the ground and spin it around, and you're all on there, and then the person who's running jumps on and it just swings around to the point where either you throw up or you fall off or both. Oh yeah. The merry-go-rounds, yeah, they're scary. I have one. I've got arthritis in both my knees, but one of my knees in particular I've had arthritis in that knee for close to 20 years, thanks to a playground injury when I was about 8. So, I think we've all, if you're Gen X, we survived. Oh dear. Witches' hats. I'm not sure what the witches' hats were, but we also had these rockets that were like climbing frames, and just, all metal climbing frames on asphalt so that when you fell off, you basically landed on the asphalt. And face it, our slides didn't have anything soft underneath them. You basically, if you fell off, you landed on asphalt or concrete. Oh, wow. Yeah, and monkey bars. Oh, my gosh. I mean, really, it's amazing any of us survived even through to become teenagers. I mean, when I was little here in Australia, they'd only just made it legal. They'd only just made it illegal for cars to not have seatbelts in the back. So a lot of parents were still sort of like, whatever, you didn't have to have seatbelts in the back before. We're not going to worry about our kids being buckled up in the back. And, when you go in the old family wagon where everyone would pile in the back part of the wagon where there's no seats and no seatbelts. Well, no, true. You don't fall off a merry-go-round, you fly off. Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because even though the slide does look like it is at a steeper angle and it's been put on a cubby house that's too high, I just sort of think it's not as steep as these old slides. It's not as high as these old slides. But I don't think it would be dangerous. Oh yeah, the things that my grandfather had one of those old wagons that the tailgate was like it opened sideways and it had a window that you could unwind. And I was too little to travel in the back of it, but I know that my brothers were older and I know that they travelled in that occasionally just in the back of it with the window open. Like, can you imagine the scary thought? Yeah, now I had a conversation with my brother the other day about this because here, you don't dare drink drive anymore. And my brother was saying that when he was quite young, it was par for the course for people to go out and to drink drive. And that when they must have introduced like drink driving laws when he was really little, because he was saying that my parents used to actually get quite resentful of the fact that there were now these drink driving laws, and that when they went to parties that they could get booked for driving home after drinking. And I'm like, wow, how much has society changed? It's just amazing. Oh dear. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. How many country kids have grown up riding in the back of a ute around farms and stuff? My mum was the same. When I was little, Mum had a mini teeny tiny car and she'd smoke in the car. And, there's no escaping it for us. I think a lot of us were passive smokers when we were very little. It's disturbing when you think about it. And obviously, how many of us, our mothers smoked right through pregnancy because they didn't know better. Oh, yeah, yeah. Where I used to live, because I was, like, you know, working long hours, traveling a lot through the week, I would head out to friend's place on a Friday or a Saturday night, and I always had to make sure that I left early enough to avoid the people taking the drunk route home. Because even back then, 10 years ago, when I was still bothering to go out on a Friday or a Saturday night to hang out with friends, even then you'd get people taking the drunk route home on the country roads, because they're country roads, and like people think that they can still drive on country roads. Oh, Bonzo, I'm not going to put that one up, but I think we've all seen some rather scary playground incidents from, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, our school was playground on the weekend for kids, and it had a really steep hill that was like a 2-part hill. So you'd have a steep part, it would level out for a bit, and then it'd be steep again. And just thinking about the number of times we used to launch ourselves down there on roller skates or bikes or skateboards or things like that. I mean, for me, it was only roller skates, and I'd usually only do a very short amount of the hill. But I used to know kids kids that were like 6 or 7 who would go down that hill on bikes and no fear whatsoever. Yeah, that still happens here in Australia. People refer to it as the drunk route. And it's like everywhere you are, like locals always know where the drunk route is. And yet country cops seem to just let it go. It's like, country cops know where the drunk route is, but they still ignore it. Which I shouldn't be laughing about it, because I do know of young people who lost their lives because they followed the example of their parents and decided to take the drunk route home, and it didn't end well at all. Yeah, see, I mean, a lot of people didn't know. I mean, my generation, none of our parents would have stopped smoking or drinking or anything like that when they were pregnant. Like, I'm one of 4 kids, and mum smoked with every one of them. And then, continued it in the vehicle, whatever vehicle we had at whatever time. So, yeah, I don't know. Oh my gosh. Your step drove home from the lake wearing goggles, snorkel, and flippers when the cop pulled him over, and my stepdad got out of the car. The cop couldn't keep a straight face and told him to take the flippers off. That is classic. My uncle used to tell a story when the breathos used to be bags, not the like electronic things, but they used to be bags that people would blow into. And my uncle used to tell a story about being pulled over one time, and he was so drunk that he actually blew into the bag and burst it. And I could believe that of him, because he used to get into some crazy situations. But Well, we missed out on that. Our families would take us up the mountain once a year. It was like an annual pilgrimage. You'd go up to the snow once a year, play in the snow for a few hours and come back down. And then, we never really learnt to do any of the crazy fun stuff that you see people in Canada and places like that doing, who know how to enjoy the ice and the snow. We would do sleigh. We would do grass sledding, where you'd get like a bag or a couple of bits of wood and go down a really steep hill on grass. But that's got to be nowhere near in comparison to doing it on snow and ice. It really is amazing that any of us survived to adulthood. There's a woman that I follow on TikTok called Slim Sherry, and she's hilarious because she talks a lot about these sort of crazy experiences, these Gen X things. Wow. Can you imagine anyone doing that? Advice around smoking after having a baby was to smoke at least 12 steps away from the house, come in, change clothes, wash hands and face, etc. before picking up the baby, which is a bit over the top. Yeah. Can you imagine that? No one's going to do that. I would certainly think you'd want to wash your hands before you handle the baby. But that, wow. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Daniel and the washing hands and the 12 steps away, that's normal. But changing your clothes? So you're going to change your clothes like 10 times a day or something? I mean, I think back to when I was a smoker and I was going out, and there was sometimes when I'd be going outside like every half hour for a cigarette. Oh my gosh, wow. Your grandmother was told to smoke to make sure her babies were small in the 1950s. That's unreal. Wow. Locals here in Pictou County are still drink drive and know the back way home. Yeah. Well, in Australia, a lot of the country towns just have one country copper, and they tend to just look the other way. There used to be, I remember where I used to live, there was one copper who would go into the pub at about like 10 o'clock at night and basically do a head count and say, I'm coming back in like an hour and a half, and he'd be checking out who's had a few drinks. But he'd basically give them a heads up and say, I'm coming back. Or he'd be like, I'm going to be on the road watching you guys at this particular time. So it just meant that they just all left early. Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm glad I don't smoke anymore because the cost here in Australia is phenomenal. But I reached a point before I just went cold turkey. When I can't do this anymore, it's costing a fortune. I reached a point where like I was going through a pack of 50s in 2 days. And I was just like, nah, this has got to stop. And yeah, I just went cold turkey, which was necessary. It would have sent me broke. Okay, so Daniel and the Tonka truck. So let's listen to this first, and then I've got the documents to go through.
Wednesday that Lily got a. So
Sorry,
let me
that was
ask you about
muted.
this, because you said that on Wednesday that Lily got a black eye from leaning over, I think, a Tonka truck or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I can explain that situation. You continue and then I'll explain it.
well, yeah. Well, what I was going to ask about that is, I mean, was that in any way, shape, or form why they were not in school? Because like no.
So I'm just replaying this bit, and I did address it yesterday in terms of the way that he's adding Patty in as part of his alibi. He's like, well, Patty was there, so like you have to believe me because Patty was there, even though obviously she's not going to come out and, speak up and say, yeah, this happened. And then he's also removing Malaya from the situation in case she's going to come out and say, no, that's not true. So he has her out at the DMV. So he's basically well and truly shoring up his alibi with his narrative here.
No one's really talked about that besides you.
Yeah, I was the only one. I brought that up, yeah. And I can go into depth on that. When we were over at Patty's house, and like the big yellow Tonka trucks, there was like a big yellow dump truck. And if you push down on the back of the dump truck, the truck flips up, and they're the metal ones, right? It flipped up. I mean, Patty was sitting right in her leather chair, like she always sits in the living room. Me and her were sitting there. I think this might have been when Malaya was at the DMV or wherever she happened to go.
Yeah, bam. That is exactly the thing that I was hoping to point out yesterday with the documents, which I didn't have on hand at the time. It would have been mentioned in her police interview. Not only that, but that would have meant that she would have had an easy way to pinpoint the last time that she saw the children at her house, as opposed to the confusion that we do get from her, which we'll look at soon. Yeah, anything that doesn't involve proof, he can explain. And now he's basically using Durwood's strategy of, there was a witness. You're not going to hear from the witness, but there was a witness. You have to believe me, there was a witness, even though, they're not going to come forward and verify it. Choosing a witness that is not going to be able to verify it because they're not publicly available. We do hear comments about her having dementia, about her being an alcoholic, all sorts of things like that. I spoke to Belinda about this months and months ago, and she said she's sharp as a tack, because that's, when the dementia stuff was first being discussed. And I said to Belinda, is this true? Is it possible that Patty's got a bit of dementia? And she said, no, the interactions she's had with her and what she knows of her, she's sharp as a tack. A bit, bearing in mind that Belinda got cut out from that side of the whole situation for a number of years. And I've had friends who've had parents go through dementia, and it can come on really quickly. But there's not been any suggestion from anyone other than, from Daniel's side of the world, just trying to push a narrative. And I think possibly that came out after the documents because of some of the things that were not making Daniel look so great. So unless we have any solid verification of that, I'm not going to run with that too much.
Right. She was getting
So
a license and
Lily
shit.
pushed down on it, and the Tonka truck swung up and hit her in the face, and she was crying and stuff. And
Yeah, good point, actually. She would have seen her at the property. And, you know, she was present for the kids' birthdays and stuff like that. Clearly she was still, you know, capable of managing Malaya in terms of getting her a vehicle and stuff like that. So I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised if it was an issue. Restarted your phone. Yeah, it always helps restarting phones and things when you're lagging. I was having a shocking time the other day with my iPad and restarted it, and bam, it was fine.
usually when kids get hurt, you comfort them and stuff, right? Because that was like a pretty crazy thing for.
Okay, I have to run that back because he's not saying that he actually comforted her or anything. I think he's just saying usually this is what you do.
DMV or wherever she happened to go.
Right. She was getting a
So
license and
Lily
shit.
pushed down on it, and the Tonka truck swung up and hit her in the face, and she was crying and stuff. And usually when kids get hurt, you comfort them and stuff, right? Because that was like a pretty crazy thing for a kid to the truck to always swing up. And I mean, my kids have had this before too, where you push down on the big Tonka trucks and they swing up and hit you in the face.
Bingo, that's where he's getting it from. He's seen it happen with one of his kids. So he's decided to throw it out there as this is what has happened with Lily. And in actual fact, the thumbnail, I intentionally chose that particular image for the thumbnail because it is the view that was from I think it was the Globe and Mail, and they took a photo where they're taking a photo through the swings, and you can see behind the swings there's a big plastic truck that's like a Tonka truck, but it's not a Tonka truck. It's like a big tipper, big plastic outdoor tipper thing. But yeah, to have him turn around and say, yes, this happened to one of my kids. They are, aren't they? Because, you know, Jack ran into a door handle, as you do. I wonder if his own kids ever went home with accidental injuries. When you start to see the way that unraveled in terms of Malaya ringing Belinda or messaging Belinda to say, where's Cody, because the RCMP want to talk to him. Belinda saying he lives here now. And then Malaya ringing back RCMP and saying, oh, she thinks that he's taken them to New Brunswick or something like that. Knowing full well that Cody was at home with his mother, and like, what, does she think the whole family was going to hide it? It's ridiculous. I know. The story falls apart when you come with the she was at the DMV or wherever. He's removing her from the scene and welcome into, by the way, MMC middle child, and also Karen and anyone else that I haven't greeted. He's got to remove her from the scene so that she can't come back and say that never happened. But he's can't quite figure out where to place her. Well, she might have been at the DMV or wherever. Right. Well, she certainly made a really quick and really good choice in terms of once the Lily and Jack went missing, basically saying, nah, you're not getting access to the kids. So, yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Good on her. Good on her. And clearly she's raised those kids well, because the RCMP spoke to them, according to Daniel, and they dumped him in it and said about him being violent with Lily and Jack and locking the children in the room and stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, Daniel would be around 35 now, because he certainly is very immature. That's what it is. This story, he's setting up the whole plausible deniability so well here. But it's not just well, Malaya was not there. I think she was at the DMV, but, she was not there. She was somewhere not there. But also I've got a witness, but it's not a witness that you can actually question about it. Clever woman. I'm not going to discuss, I think I'm going to steer clear of talking too much about his ex-wife or her children, just because of Scamnita, because I don't want to give her any information that can be turned into a new story, a new drama. Good point. She was a girly girl, but she was playing with a Tonka truck close enough for it to flick up and hit her in the face. Janie says she liked making mud pies in the little outdoors kitchen. Exactly. It actually says in the documents that they've got the tracking thing on each other's phones. He says it he frames it in terms of, we both do that, so we know so we each know where each other is. That's BS. It's because he wants to track where Malaya is all the time. So he knows. He would know if this actually happened. He would know exactly where Malaya was. Yeah, I see occasionally that they've been live. You go over there and there's been a live, and it's like, oh my God, what's the latest story? Hate to think. I stopped paying attention over a month ago. Yeah, I'm just going to steer clear of talking too much about the ex and her children, just because of some of the vultures in this case. I think it's much better just to steer clear of anything relating to them. I think it's, yeah. Oh, right. That, now the penny drops. Now the penny drops. That'd be it. That's quite likely why she deleted that app, because he was tracking her through that app. Because he does state quite clearly in the documents that they kept track of each other with their phones or something like that. When we look at the documents, I just don't think, I agree with you, Charlotte, something doesn't add up. Okay, just run it back just a little bit before we go up to the documents.
Right, because that was like a pretty crazy thing for a kid to the truck to always swing up. And I mean, my kids have had this before too, where you push down on the big Tonka trucks and they swing up and hit you in the face.
And I missed that too, where he goes, oh, it's a pretty crazy thing. This is offering justification. It's like, oh, it's crazy. You might not believe it, but it really did happen. It's the acknowledgement of, well, yeah, you might think it sounds unlikely, but trust me, it really happened. It's the justification for his story. So, yeah, I missed that the first time around, but just looking at Denise's comments, and I do agree with her. She won't actually hear me say that until she gets to this point. There's ways to be professional on here. That's just what I'm going to say. Yeah. Here in Australia, there is there's that initiative where people can take their mobile phones, their old mobile phones, to various places and donate them for women who are getting out of domestic violence situations. So basically they just say, look, do a factory reset on your phone, take everything off, do a factory reset, make sure that it's, unlocked, and then you go and you donate it. Like here, we can take phones to our local library, and you can actually look it up online if you got a phone. If you've got a new phone and your old phone's perfectly fine, you can actually look up online and look for locations where you can donate your phone, and it can be given as a safe phone for women dealing with DV. But it's good to know that people are doing, that organisations can do those cyber spy checks for women when they get out. Wow. That's so, so frightening. He could turn on the webcam with the one on your laptop. It can become a dangerous situation having a secret phone, and organisations really work hard on making that safe. But it certainly allows them to have something that is not accessed by their husband or partner. Oh, wow. So you got a new phone but not a laptop, and the police found it. Wow. So that's something you wouldn't think about. you know, it's so widely spoken about in terms of men tracking women's phones and stuff like that, but you don't think about it in terms of the laptop. Wow. Yeah, and that's the whole reason of giving them a new phone, because you don't know what's been installed in your phone. Oh, wow. So you recommend swapping for a new phone and laptops, etc., or go to a reputable service, etc. And a lot of places now do have, I mean, gosh, we've got multiple places here where you can go and take your phone or your laptop or something for, you know, any sort of services like that. Wow, checking for tags in gas tanks, etc. Wow. He had petitioned the hard drive and hidden his cyber stalking software in the petition. Wow. It's frightening the lengths that people will go to. It really is. That's just, it's quite sobering. And this is why we still have so many women ending up missing or ending up deceased. Because of the lengths that men go to. Wow.
I mean, that even happened to me as a kid. But yeah, like I don't know for 100% if she had the black eye, but it definitely hit her in the face. And usually black eyes don't form right away, right? They usually take like a few days and then they'll start to turn purple and then they'll make their way to like a yellowish color. And then, as bruising progresses, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they always
Because what bruising is the blood is trapped between your layers of skin, and the body needs to dissolve that blood that's trapped, and that's why it changes color over time, and eventually the body has a way of dissipating the blood that's trapped between the skin.
But
sorry, I just had to leave in that Professor Dan moment because I thought everyone would just appreciate that. Yeah, he's quite an expert on the progression of black eyes. Knows how it all goes intimately. That said, him and Janie are doing this. Oh, we're not sure if there was a black eye. And yet this is an incident that he's claiming occurred on the Wednesday, meaning that it would have been visible on the Thursday, no doubt. Yep, you are spot on. The reason he's able to give this very, very accurate description of how a black eye works is that he was trying to figure out how visible it was on the camera footage on the Thursday. He wanted to figure out how dark he wanted to try and remember how dark it would have been on the Thursday, which says to me that he was probably already tweaking when they went into town on the Thursday. If he can't even remember how much was showing of Lily's black eye. Or maybe he's just trying to figure out if it was dark enough to show on camera. Definitely. And if you get a whack from a Tonka truck, it's going to be the edge of it that's going to cause the black eye. So you're going to get, that's going to come up red really quickly. And you can guarantee that at the latest, by the time she got up the following morning, she would have had a major shiner. Not that that happened, but him and Janie being so vague and doing the, oh, well, it can take a while. No. If what happened, if what he's describing is the way it happened, then it would have been extremely visible the next morning. Well, he said, yeah, possibly a cut too, because he said it was the metal one. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. Maybe, yeah. I would speculate, given that he's so desperate to get hold of the camera footage, I would speculate that you are quite right, and that he hit Lily on the Thursday, which is why he wants to see the footage to see if it was visible yet when they were in Dollarama. That's a good point. That could also be another reason why we don't see that footage, because it could be something with the body language as well. Oh, yeah, the Tonka truck thing, it's a possibility. It can happen, but it's very doubtful, especially when he turns around and says, oh, it's happened to my kids before and it happened to me. Tell me how many people in your family have all been hit in the face and got black eyes off Tonka trucks. Because I'd be very surprised if one person in your family was hit by a Tonka truck in the face. I'd be very surprised if there were more than one. Sadly, these kids would have been on alert the entire time. It's a frightening thought. That image that I put up the other day with them sitting under the Christmas tree and Jack making himself really, really small and making himself really closed up and up against the wall. It just, to me, it spoke volumes. Yep, I was one of 4. None of us had black eyes. Now, I know that my brother split his eye open when he was a toddler landing on the bricks outside, but he never had a black eye from that. I know I had to have stitches above my eye when I was little, when I, going back to the not having seatbelts, when I opened the car door and fell out, because that's what you do when you have ADHD and you're in a car and no one worried about seatbelts because it was only a new law. Yep. Everyone I know whose kids have had black eyes have got them during sport. Soccer ball to the face, a hockey stick to the face. To have 3 people all suffer the same injury, I think not. Okay, so let's bring this up. I'll have to pause it before it takes off. Okay, so I've gone through, I've got Malaya's statements, Daniel's statements, and Paddy's statements. Again, yep. Your nephews all had black eyes at one time and other injuries from sports or just being wild and crazy boys. Now, I can believe that with boys. I've seen, teenage boys or, young preteen boys who get pretty rough with each other. Especially boys who have ADHD, and yes, you might end up with a few having black eyes at the same time. But in terms of all getting a black eye from exactly the same experience of being hit in the face by a Tonka truck, it's highly unlikely. Let me see. The only time I had stitches was when I fell out of the car as a little kid, and I have no recollection of it all at all. The only thing I can remember is running my fingers over the vinyl on the car door, and I can actually remember pulling at the door handle. But I can't remember getting stitches or anything else. I just remember that little moment in time. But I was really, really tiny. And I only know that the rest of it because my mother told me about it. But coin-operated cars. Oh, I know the ones, yeah. I've never had a black eye. Really, when I was a kid, the only broken bone I had was my little finger. Again, ADHD, getting into somewhere where I shouldn't have been. The after that, I was like well and truly an adult before I broke a bone again. Okay. I inherited my brother's Matchbox cars. That was my main thing. I always played with Matchbox cars, or played outside in the backyard. Right, so let's look at this. So this is Wednesday. They left the house at 12:51 p.m., went to Irving Oil in Westville, got 20 fuel, then drove to Paddy's and arrived at around 2:01. At 3:18, she went across to get a plate for her car. And Malaya says that Daniel and the kids stayed at her grandmother's house. And I'm going to put a pin in that because it's not consistent. Then we have them getting more gas. Now, yes, sure, if they were driving that little Nissan, it's not like driving around in a little sedan or a little hatchback. But how is it if they got $20 fuel that they needed to go get more gas? So that's something that I've always questioned. And then you've got the going to Walmart, picking up groceries, and the whole family went together. And then they stopped at Paddy's and gave her bank card at 9:19 and arrived home at 10:19. Why did it take an hour to get home from Paddy's? Wouldn't that be like a 40-minute drive, especially late at night? Oh, they could have topped up the card with the credit card. That makes sense. That's a good question. Because they... Oh, I see gas and fuel. So the gas is gas as in heating gas. Irving oil is for furnace oil. Okay. No, she didn't put the plates on her car. I showed that in a video a while back where there's in the news footage, there's footage of the vehicle parked at the marsh, and there's also footage of it when it was parked around the where it was towed from, and there were no plates on it, or at least not on the back of it. We can't see the front to know. Yeah, that makes sense. And that could also be the other possibility. They were driving a different car, or went in two different cars. Have we got confirmation that they went in the same car? Because we have, is it the Dollarama footage where Malaya goes in sooner than Daniel and he comes in with Lily and Jack after? I guess they would know from comparing GPS, though. Okay, so just going with this, we have them going to Paddy's. Malaya went in the afternoon to get a plate for her car. Daniel stayed at Paddy's with the children, apparently, allegedly. Okay, next one. Okay, first of all, Daniel can't even remember if they went to town on Wednesday. And he talks about having the conversation with his friend who was supposedly helping him with the custody thing. And then the second time around. So the first one is the first interview with Daniel, and he said he couldn't remember if they went on Wednesday. Now we have Daniel's version when he finally figured out what Wednesday was. So Daniel initially had the days mixed up and then confirmed through online banking on his phone that they spent Wednesday in Truro with Malaya's grandmother and went to run errands, including Malaya's something on Thursday. They all went to Malaya's grandmother's, Paddy's, and got there around 12:50 p.m. Malaya went to get plates, presumably, and he stayed in the car with the kids. All three kids were sleeping. Now, let me just run that back for a sec to the first slide. Okay, so the whole family left the house at 12:51 and arrived at Paddy's at 2:01. This is according to Malaya's GPS. She went to get the plate for her car. Daniel apparently stayed at Paddy's with the kids. And then Daniel's version is that they actually got to Paddy's at 12:50. And then she went to get plates. He stayed in the car with the kids and they were all sleeping and it was quiet. That's what it sounds like to me. And when he does the talking about phone calls, he claims that Cindy rang Malaya also when they were in the car, which also seems to fit in with this whole time frame of them all being in the car together at this point in time. I don't think Daniel spent much time at all alone with Lily and Jack. He really doesn't seem to know them. And welcome in, Brookie. Exactly. It does sound like they all went together to get the plates for Malaya's car. Malaya dashed in to get them and he stayed in the car with the children. I mean, I could see a situation of Malaya leaving the kids with Paddy and Daniel not being in the house because I don't think he was welcome. But why would you not just leave the kids with her while you went and did this? The math ain't mathin'. That's what I'm thinking. If the kids were sleeping in the car, now, when we look at this, you can imagine that the getting a plate from Malaya's car would have caused tension. And Daniel mentioned that they had the kids' melatonin. Is it possible that Malaya was worried that Daniel was going to lose his crap with the kids if they got cranky because he was already in a foul mood? So were the kids already medicated and they slept in the car because Malaya made sure that they slept in the car so that they wouldn't upset Daniel? Because that's the thing. The baby? Sure. A 4 and a 6-year-old who live out in a rural area. It would be exciting going to town. So it's curious that supposedly all of them were asleep. Oh, right, okay. I wasn't sure how it worked because I'm not even sure if we can get it here in Australia. Yep, that is such a good point. He wouldn't have let her go off anywhere without him. So it does seem that this is the more likely scenario, that he waited in the car while she went in and got her plates. What's the difference between medicating and going to sleep? I mean, I'm just hypothesizing that maybe if the kids were asleep in the car, all asleep in the car, that maybe something was given to them to make them sleep. Maybe Malaya was concerned that they were going to upset Daniel. Um, it Benadryl, yeah, that's also a possibility. I could imagine them, yeah, exactly what Grove is saying here. I could imagine them sleeping on the way back. But on the way out, especially if they were supposedly going to Paddy's place, I would expect them to be too wired. These are kids that Malaya says that she put them to bed and they were super excited, but she got them calmed down and got them to sleep. And yet they weren't super excited about heading into town and heading to Paddy's, and they slept. So melatonin would knock your boys with ADHD out when little. They do give warnings about children's melatonin because of that sort of thing, because too much could be a bad thing. So yeah, and that's why I wonder if they were given something to make them sleep in the car because Daniel was already in a not so good frame of mind and Malaya was afraid that they'd trigger him. Okay, so we have completely opposite stories here. No possibility of Lily getting hit in the face with a Tonka car if she's asleep in the car here. Yeah, I think they've cracked down, from what someone was saying some time back, I think they've also cracked down in the States. Not only that, it's around lunchtime. Aren't they going to be hungry and cranky? Like, I'm sorry, when kids are hungry and cranky, they're not going to sleep. They're going to be sitting there going, are we there yet? They're going to be excited about going to see Paddy if that's what was happening. If they did really take that white car out, it could have been their first trip in the white car. For little kids, that would be exciting. I know. It is odd, the things that were redacted, that's for sure. Definitely. Okay, let's have a look at Paddy. I think Paddy's next, unless there's more from Daniel. Okay. Paddy Pearson said she last saw them all when they came to visit. She's not sure of the date, but she said it was early in the week, 1 or 2 weeks before. When they came over, Daniel stayed in the car and Malaya did laundry. Daniel and Malaya left to take Meadow to an appointment, and Malaya might have gotten groceries, but she couldn't remember if she took the children or not. Now, the significance here is that the interview was on May the 5th. 3 days after the children went missing. It's possible when she says it was early in the week, 1 or 2 weeks before, that she could maybe have lost track of time in terms of Wednesday could feel like early in the week. Now, if, okay, May the 5th, So we're talking about like, what, 5 days? Someone do the maths for me because my brain's not mathing right now. We're talking about 5 or 6 days. So it's possible that this could tie in with the Wednesday visit. But what's significant here is, first of all, if this is the one that she's referring to, and I think possibly it is. I mean, there's some weeks when I get to Thursday and I think, holy shit, Monday feels like it was a week ago. So it could fit in. But what stands out here is when they came over, Daniel stayed in the car. She couldn't remember if she took the children or not. So there's no much mention here of the Tonka truck incident. But not only is there no mention here of the Tonka truck incident, but she has Daniel staying in the car. Whereas Daniel claims that Patty was sitting right there in her chair, witnessed the whole thing. He was there with the children. Malaya was off at the DMV. And that's when it happened. So explain this, Daniel. Because the only account that has Daniel actually going into Patty's house is Malaya. Patty has him staying in the car, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It would be very interesting to hear Patty's side of this. But I'm kind of definitely leaning towards him not being welcome. The reason they moved to Janie's was because Patty kicked him out. And Patty was saying to Malaya, well, you need to either get a job or go back to school. And Daniel said, hey, come and live with me and you won't have to do either. So I suspect that he wasn't welcome at Patty's place. I can imagine that things probably were a bit tense between them if basically he had lived there and been thrown out. So I strongly suspect that the account of him staying in the car is a more accurate one. Especially given that we've got 2 accounts of him staying in the car and only one from Malaya of her claiming that he stayed at Patty's with the children. That was aimed at Malaya because he knew that, I reckon by that point he already wasn't allowed to go near Malaya. He wanted to make sure Malaya got the message. I think that is definitely the situation. I think there's a lot more to this story that we don't know. It's curious. Geez, honestly, I've got to stop yawning. It would be if Patty has dementia and as they're implying, then them using her card to get gas and groceries certainly would be elder financial abuse. But my take on that, even though from what we hear, Cindy and Paddy don't necessarily have the most brilliant relationship, I think Cindy being a nurse, and from what we know about the situation in terms of Malaya being in the ambulance with Cindy and then leaving, I would imagine that if Cindy believed that there were issues with Paddy's mental health, that she would be keeping a much closer eye on Paddy's credit card and things like that to make sure that Malaya didn't take advantage of it. Because I think, like most people would. That is such a curious situation. Such a curious situation. I won't delve into it too much here, but Karen's been doing some very interesting research lately, which raises questions about how that family is made up. Certainly seems that, well, we know that Bruce Pearson wasn't Cindy's father. We know that much. The question is, where does the Murray surname come from? Anyway, I won't go down that too much. Got to remember that most of what we're hearing about Cindy is coming from Daniel, who has seen Cindy as a threat from day one, because she was the one threat to his control over Malaya. He could not remove her from the situation. So everything that we hear from Daniel, we have to take with a grain of salt, and we have to be careful how we interpret it. Because he is going to do his best to throw her in a really bad light. But I could imagine oh yeah, that's for sure. And look, honestly, when we hear about Henry, really don't think he had his life together when him and Cindy were together. Sounds like he had issues with alcoholism. He got done for selling rugs. So it's quite possible that when Malaya was little, Cindy was pretty much the parent. But I also think when I look at nurses, they're very much good at dealing with organising situations. So I do think, given that from what Hayley's saying, Cindy certainly knew what Malaya was like, I do think that perhaps if there were any signs of Paddy showing any amount of dementia, that even if she's not her biological mother, that Cindy would still, still step in. So true, so true. And if not just that, if the shifts were, you know, going into night shift or something like that, because you don't always get a choice in terms of what shifts you're working. So I think people forget that. Now, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I know that in Australia, nurses' incomes aren't as great as what they should be. So if she was, like, even, you know, even with Hayden around after her and Joe split up, if she had custody of Hayden and Malaya, then yes, she could have, most likely was working 12-hour shifts. She was most likely not getting a lot of say in when those shifts were, and probably did have to rely on Patty to have someone who could actually, you know, be there for the kids when they go to bed and when they get up. Yeah, exactly. I'll put that up anyway. Yeah. I've got family, I've got friends who are nurses, and when you put in those long hours, it is a struggle. And I can imagine as a single parent, now I don't know how long her and Joe Smith were together, but it doesn't sound like that went so well either. So definitely there was clearly a period of time between when her and Joe broke up and when her and Wade got together where she would have been just trying to make sure that she was providing for her kids and working 12-hour shifts. And I think that's something that doesn't get taken into consideration when people keep going back to this whole thing of, well, Patty virtually raised Hayden and Malaya. Maybe Patty helped raise Hayden and Malaya because as a single mum working as a nurse, her work hours didn't necessarily fit in with her children's like school hours and things like that. Oh, definitely. Any sort of work. Right. Hayden went to live at Paddy's when she was 13. Hayden was 3. So that would have been after Cindy and Joe split up. So spot on. Saying that Patty raised Hayden and Malaya is another way of making Cindy seem bad. And you know what the funny thing is? When you listen to Who Says What, you have Daniel and Janie, when they talk about it, it is the whole Patty raised Hayden and Malaya. When Durwood talks about it, it's more along the lines of Patty virtually raised them, meaning she had them a lot. She didn't have them all the time. Now, if, especially like with a 3-year-old, if you are a single parent working as a nurse and you've got a 3-year-old, well, it's not like you can even try and get shifts to fit in with school hours. And I don't know what Canada's like, but here in Australia, childcare is expensive. A single mother trying to work full time and trying to get childcare as well, it would reach a point where it would almost be not worth you working because of the amount you were paying. Yeah, that's the thing. Daniel is so resentful because just from what I hear when I listen to the way Daniel talks about Malaya's relationship with Cindy, I get the distinct impression that, like I said, first of all, in terms of the coercive control, he couldn't isolate Malaya from Cindy. He couldn't do that. That was the one person that he had no control of in terms of making Malaya cut her out of her life. Paddy, he didn't want to because Paddy had the money. Cindy, he would have loved to, but he couldn't because of the whole mother-daughter relationship. He would have immediately lost control over Malaya had he tried to make demands on her. So instead, what he would have done, and you can tell it from the way he talks, he would have been working on undermining their relationship from the moment they moved into that trailer. Anytime Cindy did anything wrong or anything that he could spin as being wrong, he would work on Malaya over that so that even the smallest things would start to feel to Malaya like, that Cindy was not a good parent, a good person to have in her life. So when he makes that comment of, Malaya was even talking about cutting Cindy off completely, and I told her, no, don't do that. She's your mother. He probably did say that, but it would have been part of the manipulation because he would have been the one to get her to the point where she believed that Cindy was just such a bad part of her life that she was better off not having Cindy in it. But of course, Daniel can't be the bad guy in that. So having set it all up to make Malaya start to resent Cindy to the point where she was ready to cut ties, his role then was to act like the sympathetic partner so that he could not be blamed afterwards for it. So it's that reverse psychology kind of thing. Setting it up to try and convince Malaya that she is better off without Cindy around. And then when Malaya finally reaches that point, being the, oh no, look, she is your mother, because he knew that he'd pretty much achieved the goal. Cindy answering the phone to withheld numbers. Exactly. That's normal. That's so normal. I know it's odd. But I think Logan is very protective of Daniel. So I think she would come out in his defense no matter what. So, yeah, exactly. That's what it is, Karen. It's the clan mentality. I think as much as some content creators try and spin the way Durwood says that the Mackenzies love their children, and I must admit it does sound really creepy the way he says it, but I do think the point he's making there is that as far as they're concerned, baby M was Daniel's child. So I would imagine that a lot of the resentment coming from Daniel's family is that Cindy basically took baby M away from Daniel, and baby M belongs in their family. I think that is the mentality of that. Especially when you hear Daniel, when he talks about baby M, he talks about his daughter, and then he has to correct himself to saying our daughter. Bonza, I would love to put that up. I'm not sure if I should, but and yeah, Charlotte, exactly. They do not want Malaya's family raising a Mackenzie child. That's the be-all and end-all of it. As far as they're concerned, that baby M should be with the Mackenzie family. She should be either with Daniel or with Logan. It is. It's the clan thing, 100%. I'd love to put that up on screen, Bonza, but it might get me in trouble. But yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, I think when we look at these documents, the Tonka truck thing never happened. The only person, we go right back to Malaya. Daniel and the kids stayed at her grandmother's house. And yet we have Daniel saying, where's that? Malaya went to get plates, whatever. He stayed in the car with the kids. And then the same with Patty, which when they came over, Daniel stayed in the car and Malaya did laundry. Malaya and Daniel left to take Meadow to an appointment. She can't remember if she had the children or not. So you have two accounts which match. And what is significant is that with that is the matching accounts come from two people who will have not colluded. The chances of Patty and Daniel getting to go together and going, this is what the narrative is going to be, are 0. So the fact that Patty's account and Daniel's account match tells me that Daniel did not go into Patty's house, that he stayed out in the car. The other thing that's significant with this in terms of Malaya giving one story and Daniel giving another story, this is after Malaya left Gerlock Road. So when they've decided to run it back and ask them about Wednesday, which clearly they weren't expecting, neither of them had their narrative prepared. Well, that's the thing. There's all this confusion too in terms of what happened when. Because, hang on, I'm going to go back to Malaya because this is where I start getting confused as well. In terms of, so Wednesday, I should have brought up Thursday as well. I probably should do a live stream where we look at Wednesday and Thursday. So Wednesday is supposedly doing laundry, getting plates for the car, getting gas, Walmart and groceries, and getting home really late. I haven't got Malaya's account for Thursday, and I wish I did. Daniel's got his days mixed up, apparently. See, Daniel here has them at Paddy's on Thursday, I think. But the other thing with that is Paddy doesn't have them at her place twice. She only has them early in the week, which to me says Wednesday. She doesn't say that they went to her place 2 days in a row. Yeah, Wednesday and Thursdays, something's just not adding up here. Oh, they were definitely double dipping with Earl buying groceries and Paddy buying groceries. That's the other question. How could you do 6 loads of washing in that short period of time and still get groceries? And Belinda said that there were piles of dirty clothes on the floor. And she said that if her sister said they're dirty clothes, they're dirty clothes. The way the timeline is being portrayed does not allow time for this apparent 6 loads of laundry. Honestly, who's got the energy to do 6 loads of laundry in one go anyway? It's yeah, it could have been like dump it on Patty, get her to do it while we run around. But even still, according to Malaya, they didn't get to Paddy's until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they did all this running around, and then they dropped her bank card back off at 9:20. I suppose if you went all out and if you had a separate washer and a separate dryer, then maybe you could get 6 loads of laundry done in a 7-hour period, but you'd be pushing it, because if you're washing children's clothes, you're not going to do a quick wash. You're going to do a full like wash with children's clothes, especially if the children are still wearing pull-ups occasionally. There's no way. This story of doing 6 loads of laundry, not a chance. Yeah. They went there to mooch off Paddy. They went there to... Now, if you look at the timeline, they went to Paddy's first before getting the plate for Malaya's car. That to me says that Paddy paid the expenses for getting the plate. And she also paid for the gas. And that they were mooching off her so that Daniel could get his vapes. They didn't do laundry. Maybe there was 1 load of laundry. Who knows? But there's no way they did 6 loads of laundry. Yeah, that makes the most sense, doesn't it? Well, I put them to bed in their clothes because we did laundry on Wednesday and I just hadn't had the time or the energy to unpack their clothes. Now, here's the thing. In terms of, let's say hypothetically, that the laundry was done on Wednesday. Well, clearly if it was done by Paddy. In which case, either damp clothes were put in bags and left in bags for several days, or the normal thing that a grown-ass adult would do if you are doing a load of laundry and you're washing it and drying it, you have to fold the laundry when it comes out of the dryer. Because if you put hot laundry, warm laundry in a washing basket or a garbage bag while it's still warm, it's going to be crumpled as hell. So if Paddy had done the laundry, I would imagine that she would have actually folded everything as it came out of the dryer. Meaning it would have been really easy just to lift it out of the bags. So the laundry thing just does not fly with me at all. Well, they couldn't have taken everything to Paddy's because there were piles of laundry in the hallway. When Belinda was there on the Saturday with her sister and with Chelsea, there were piles of laundry in the hallway. And Belinda said that it was dirty laundry. So, The laundry story doesn't fly. The Tonka truck story doesn't fly. Yep, but this is May in Nova Scotia. So this is like the weather wasn't warm. The clothes wouldn't have dried on the line. I could be wrong, but I would imagine that time of year in Nova Scotia, that if you were going to try and dry clothes out on a line, you would have to get them out really early morning just for them to have enough time to dry. Yeah. 6 bags of laundry for 5 people and dirty clothes piled up in the hallway. Whoops. I remember them making a comment about the washing the clothes or something. Well, there certainly would have been, yeah, actually it rained quite a bit around then, didn't it? True. I got a bit confused with that in terms of what was finally decided in terms of those piles of clothes on the floor. In my brain, clothes are only going to be on the floor if they're dirty in the first place. When you look at all the photos of Lily, I do think Malaya enjoyed dressing her up. I think Lily was Malaya's little doll. So it wouldn't surprise me if she had lots of clothes for Lily. Janie said that Lily changed her clothes a lot. That is correct. Which probably a learned habit from when you look at the way she was dressed up even when she was little. I think she learned to love being a little bit of a fashion model. True. Unless he owns 2 shirts that are identical. Yeah. So true. Although I think we tend to do that more in Australia than they do in other countries. When you look at people who come to Australia, one of the comments they quite often make is about our reluctance to use clothes dryers. Like, you have a clothes dryer in your house, but you almost never use it. Because it's just normal here that you just wash your clothes, you put them out on the Hills hoist. A bit of sunshine, a bit of fresh air, they come up much better than if you've got to hang them up inside. But when you look at, I know in the States it seems like to be the normal thing to just chuck them in the dryer. you do your laundry, you just pull it out and you chuck it straight in the dryer. So I think it's more of an Australian thing that we just automatically hang everything outside. Yeah, so it sounds like Canada's very much like the States, where everything just goes in the dryer. We it's like this universal thing in Australia that we won't use our clothes dryers unless we really, really have to. Honestly, when I was growing up, we used our clothes dryer so infrequently that it ended up being storage for the ironing. Any clothes that needed ironing got thrown in the dryer and left there and rarely ironed. They only got ironed if they needed to be worn. I could probably count on one hand the number of times that our clothes dryer was used. I haven't even bothered buying a clothes dryer. I think, maybe if I eventually get around to moving, then I might buy a clothes dryer when I move in and just, have the setup with the clothes dryer under the washing machine. But, I've always been accustomed to, you do your clothes, you whack them out on the line. It's just that whole Australian thing, isn't it? Nova Scotia government promotes using clotheslines. They get 50% of their energy from burning coal, so they're very energy conscious. Now, here's the thing. I feel so sad for people who didn't grow up in Australia with Hills Hoist clotheslines. You know how much fun it is as a kid to go swinging around hanging off the clothesline? Yeah, a lot of people do now buy the washer and dryer in one. To me, that just does my head in, but it's a good idea. Some of the most fun times I had, we didn't have one of those really cool Hills hoists where you wind it up to make it high and then wind it back down again. Ours was one of the more old-fashioned ones that was just on a big tall pole. So there was like a platform that you stood on to hang the clothes up so that the clothesline was nice and high and the clothes would dry really quickly. And because my mum was a scout leader, there was like this big bag of ropes by the front door that needed to go back to the scout hall, and they had loops in the bottom of the ropes. And I figured out that if I tied one of those ropes to the metal bar on the Hills hoist with the loop at the bottom, that I could launch myself off the platform, which was, I don't know, probably about 1 meter high. I could launch myself off the platform with my foot in the loop and go flying on the clothesline using this rope, and then just let go and jump off. And yeah, our clothesline was crooked because of that. So best experience for Aussie kids. Most Aussie kids didn't have a swing set. A lot did. I know my brothers had one, but it was trashed by the time we got it. But we didn't care because we just played on the clothesline. It's so much more fun to be able to just go swinging on the clothesline, just grab onto the bar and fly. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. Definitely the squirrels are well and truly loose. So it's probably a good time to wrap it up. I also think, although it's probably done and dusted by now, or maybe not, I think Belinda was going to be on Justin's again. So I do want to go try and check out some of that before that finishes. Oh, yes, of course, the adults get the Wheel of Goon. See, things that people miss out on because they're not in Australia. The Wheel of Goon is the best. You basically attach a goon bag to the Hills host, and you swing it around, if it lands where you are, you got to take a swig. I don't think the laundry was done. We know the Tonka truck incident didn't happen because I'm pretty certain Daniel never went into the house. That's my conclusion here anyway. I'd like to know what other people think, but that's where I'm at with this. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. Don't forget to hit the like button on the way out. If laundry was done, it definitely wasn't 6 bags. I'm going to say that. I think the 6 bag narrative was to put the narrative out about Malaya taking all her clothes. Anyway, thanks for coming in. If you're on replay, please leave a comment. Please hit the like on your way out. And if you're new, please subscribe. Okay, thanks, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Give a fuck about me, 'cause